dilemmas in the United States. Home ownership and high quality, affordable rental housing are critical tools for wealth building and financial well being in the United States. But this isn't just an economic issue. There's a system of social and racial disparity built into the housing system that is designed to ensure that not everyone has the opportunity for prosperity and security that housing provides. Social justice, poverty, housing, racism, and respectful community-based approaches to address these systems and structures is what we're talking about today on Being Matthew 25. Welcome, everyone. I'm DeEtte Decker, Acting Senior Director for Communications, and I'm your host for today's episode of Being Matthew 25. And joining me today is the Reverend Dr. Diane Moffett, President and Executive Director of the Presbyterian Mission Agency. How are you this afternoon, Diane? Uh-oh, I think Diane's muted. What happened here?
Diane has to unmute herself. Hi, Dee. And Facebook community. We are live.
You know, the one thing that I still struggle with, and you would think that after 2.5 years, I would have this down, and that's the unmute button.
I know.
It happens to all of us. Well, it happens to all of us, right? Yeah. Diane, as you know, in the United States and places around the globe, the number of low-income households far exceeds the affordable housing units that are available.
Yes.
And the quality of housing is also a fact that has major implications on things like people's health, their physical and their mental status, particularly adding to the burden of illness among ethnic minority populations and low-income communities.
Absolutely.
And as part of our Matthew 25 commitment, congregations and mid-councils pledge to focus on one or more of the three areas: building congregational vitality, dismantling structural racism, and eradicating systemic poverty. It's the disproportionality and homelessness that is a byproduct of systemic inequity. The lingering effects of racism continue to perpetuate disparities in critical areas that impact rates of houselessness. What can one church or presbytery do about this can be overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And so today we're hearing from the Presbytery of Denver on how they address the systems directly for affordable housing and made a difference.
Greatest need in this community.
They said the
Interfaith Alliance did a study of the greatest need in the Denver metro area, and it was named affordable housing is the greatest need in this community.
They said the median house price was going to be around $1 million.
My wife and I make above the median income, and we cannot afford a single-family home in the city of Aurora.
Pastor Wayne Laws brought the idea to us from the Interfaith Alliance when they started this thing called the Congregational Land Campaign. Like 5,000 acres of unused land that worship communities have that could be leveraged for affordable housing. I'm like, well, we've got 2 acres. We were able to run with that. We're like, okay, they need land. We have land. We have a gift. We understand that land not as ours as ownership, but it's a gift from God to be shared for the common good.
When we talked with Habitat, we very quickly recognized that their vision and their mission for this land aligned with ours. They weren't coming in this hoping to make a quick dollar, which has been part of the problem with some affordable housing here in the metro area.
This has been about a 4-year process. We had a lot of pushback from our neighbors. The immediate neighbors in our neighborhood were not too excited. They were all about supporting Habitat. They were all about supporting affordable housing. They did not want it to happen in their neighborhood. When the Matthew 25 in the presbytery was able to support us in getting the vote to rezone our land from R1 to R2, that was the final push that we needed to get this through. And that's that systemic change, right? Because if you look in our neighborhood, we're in an R1 zoning, which is big houses, big lots, and that's exclusionary zoning.
Matthew 25 is our opportunity to really address structural change.
Then when the Matthew 25 group from our presbytery became involved, it kind of put even more people together working towards the finalization of this project.
So the first thing we did was to write a letter, and we sent that off to the city council. We talked with Wayne, he said, well, there's going to be testimonies. We had 3 churches plus several ministers of Word and Sacrament. We had other elders from other churches that live in Aurora write their emails to the city council or to make some testimony.
I gotta give credit to the church and also to Habitat for the amazing amount of community outreach that they actually engaged in.
And as you start thinking about this ripple that we've thrown into this pond, and in a year from now, hopefully we're going to see homes going up on that. We start with 20 families getting the stability of home ownership and the security, and it comes with that. This is going to have an impact generations from now.
A text in the Bible that I know it in Spanish, so por sus frutos los conoceréis, by their fruits I shall know them. Being able to assist with families that need affordable housing, that is fruit.
Most cities, it is illegal to build this missing middle housing that we're getting here on this property. You can't do duplexes anymore. You can't do triplexes or quadplexes. You can't do live-work housing. You can't do cottage homes. All of that is illegal because of the zoning codes. And having stable housing is the foundation to having a successful life.
And now we're going to have a community on this property that calls this place home. People that have never been able to be homeowners before. This could transform not only their family, but their next generation and their grandchildren. So we're excited. I mean, I got goosebumps right now just thinking about it. We couldn't have done it without the support of the Matthew 25 initiative in the Denver Presbytery. And we couldn't have done it without the Interfaith Alliance of Colorado, without Habitat for Humanity. And if you can look at your resources that you have, and you can partner that with the needs of your community, then you can together, through a Matthew 25 initiative, partake in changing the structures and systems of oppression and injustice that perpetuate poverty or perpetuate racism.
Wow.
Yeah, what a story. What a story. I love it. I love how it's an ecumenical movement of people. I love what she said. We should look at our resources. Look at our resources and partner with others. Great. Mm-hmm. Diane, joining us today is the Reverend Dr. Dee Cooper, lead presbyter from the Presbytery of Denver, where that initiative is taking place right there in her backyard today. So thank you, Dee, for being with us today. It is so exciting to have you with us. Thank you.
Yeah, I have to also plug in. Dee Cooper is a board member of the Presbyterian Mission Agency. And of course, the Matthew 25 vision invitation has come through the Mission Agency, from the General Assembly through the Mission Agency. So I just have to say that about Dee too. She belongs to us.
Well, maybe that's why I'm so excited about today, is just getting to hang out with Dee, somebody that we know and love. Dee, we know you and we love you, and we know that you're new to the Presbytery of Denver, but not to Matthew 25, as Diane just said. So I want to first thank you for championing the vision for the PCUSA, and I would like to hear from you about what this work, what the Matthew 25 work, what does that mean to you as the new leader in the Presbytery of Denver?
So Dee and Diane, what a joy to be here with you. I love spending time with both of you, and also your leadership and all that you bring to all of us as Presbyterians. So thank you for your work and your energy. We have cool breezes here in Colorado today, so I wish those into the rooms that y'all are in your Zoom encounters. I was recently on a conversation with our Matthew 25 group, which you saw several people who interacted. Fernando's the lead, but also you saw Jean Dimler and Tracy and so many amazing leadership here in the Denver Presbytery. And the question was asked, why would people be involved in Matthew 25? And Louise Westfall, who's the pastor at Central Presbyterian Church, she shared this, and it was just so powerful. She said, this isn't just a program. This is a movement. It's the church embodying and embracing real and relevant issues and addressing the barriers and the injustices that we face as we live into the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I have to quote her on that. I thought, amen. That is what this is. And that's why it's become so much a part of my heart, and why I actually was happy to engage and become the new lead presbyter here in Denver, where Matthew 25 is of value. I think we're called as Reformed people to change our world, to address those systemic injustices. To look at this, and I want to say thank you again for opening the space to have the conversation, to look at affordable housing, but to look at the systems that are created that prevent that. And that's so important. It was already named the cost of living in Denver. Denver now is the 7th most expensive place to have home ownership or rent in the country. It's radical. And you heard the cost of housing. We watch and we listen. Our context is that we see increasing numbers of individuals experiencing homelessness, the growing tensions that exist between the legislature and people are saying, do something. Our populations of our encampments are growing, and that causes tension with the residents who are in homes, who out of myths and fears have their own societal injustices that they project on those on the encampments. We have the other piece is just working with our churches who are seeing this and saying, what can we do? And many times I think we get caught in this idea that we're not big enough. We don't have enough people resources. And that's what I loved about Mountain View is it's the invitation that what we can do in our actions are not based on a size or a budget, or there's so many ways to engage. And just like the Matthew 25, we have the three legs of the stool. It's the same with affordable housing. We have to engage on that multifaceted approach because each of those are important. We can't just focus on one.
It's right. They're intersectional.
Exactly.
You can't do one without the other.
We can't just focus on immediate care and direct care and support, but we're not looking at why is this happening and looking at the systemic injustices. We can't just focus on the direct care and not look at what's the next stage of supportive housing. So there's those pieces, along with what was named was this collaboration. Looking at our legislature, yes, and that's the big thing we're facing here in Denver right now is there's a ballot 123, and I have to look at the numbers. The ballot will come before us. It's 0.1% will go to Colorado affordable housing. This is coming before the whole state, and it's exciting because it's going to look at where are areas to purchase land and to look at rental assistance. But also the piece of the collaboration with the Colorado Council of Churches, with the Housing Justice Initiative, the Interfaith Alliance, Together Colorado, all of those are vital. As we move toward, the goal is housing. So with our group, we have so many people doing so many things. We felt, and I felt it was important that y'all have an opportunity to hear from our own Matthew 25 moderator, Molly Dallin Brown. Molly is the Director of Mission and Faith Formation at Central Presbyterian Church in Denver. And she's going to share with you an overview of the many different ways, not to give an exhaustive list, but hopefully in this you might hear and go, wow, we could do that, or I could do that, or that's something we hadn't considered. Yeah. So I think we have a video to share about Molly sharing the initiatives and the collaborative efforts.
I just received word from our producer that, in fact, we don't have that video. I don't know what happened there, but that's okay because we understand that, things happen. So I'm not sure where the breakdown was, but it's okay because we know that people need houses. We know that eradicating systemic poverty means that we must act compassionately towards those who don't have basic needs for human flourishing. And we have to find out, like you said, Dee, I think that's the crucial point, is we have to find out why. What are the systems
Yeah.
and what things are set up that keep these folks in this position? And the Presbytery of Denver has done that, I think, with as you said, with many projects and systems. In my view, and I know Dee and Diane, you share this view. Systems can exploit people. So we have to really look at that. Diane, I think that you had some of that experience whenever you were doing work in Greensboro.
Absolutely. First of all, let me say with Matthew 23 and our three legs, they're interrelated. They're intersectional. You can't do one without the other. So I want folks to know that even though we identify those three pieces, building congregational vitality, that's faith formation. That's making disciples who understand that we've been called, anointed, and commissioned to change the world and to represent Jesus and to bring about this kingdom that has this justice and radical hospitality and welcome for all people, the justice component. Love with skin on it, love in the public squares, justice, as Cornel West says, right? So you've got to have disciples. You'll find that there's a disproportionate number of Black, Indigenous people who are poor or who are dealing with poverty because of the enormous wealth gap in the formation of this country and the racist component to that. So it's all interlinked. So it's not surprising that you find in many inner cities and some rural areas as well, too, a disproportionate number of folks of color as well, but a lot of white folks as well. I mean, we have a larger population, so I want to make that real clear. But as a pastor for over 30 years dealing with the inner city, the last place where I served, particularly, we were really working with families, young women who were receiving aid, but needed education, needed an opportunity to develop their skills so that they could support themselves. These were single parents who wanted to do well by their children. So we began working with them. When I say we, the church was working with a local agency. And what I observed, and I wasn't particularly the one that participated in this, what I observed from afar is that once these women would, acquire some kind of educational, skill and knowledge and be able to land a position, they would make just enough that would take away the support that they were receiving for childcare. So push them back into, and so there was this frustration about, well, I'm working now, but I can't hardly, all my check is going to take care of, a child care, and then having to go through that time because children are going to need child care for a while. So that's just one example of the kind of trappings that happen. Also, the lack of accessibility when you are dealing with low income people who are on the margins, who are living in rural America, in the cities, urban, whatever, and don't have the accessibility to many of the things that you might say are free, but how do I get to them? How do I get to those places? How do I access them? So it can be a real trap. And especially, as you said earlier, Dee, having a home is essential. When we were dealing with Medicaid expansion and the lack of Medicaid expansion in the state of North Carolina, for example, the lowest of the lowest did not qualify for the support. And even to work with people to give them medicine and to help them, they needed a home. So if you didn't have a home, oftentimes you needed a refrigerator. It is just, so the systems are set up in such a way that we really deny the dignity, the human dignity, and the kind of compassion and justice that is needed for people to thrive. So really excited, Dee.
Absolutely.
It's Mary is doing.
And I think that, whenever I was working in a downtown urban church in Southern Indiana that had a very large homeless population, we had a feeding center that every Saturday we fed hot meals to everyone in the area, no questions asked. And I began to build relationships with these folks. And that was where I learned that the system was stacked against them.
Mhm.
You know, if you don't have an address, if you don't have a home, you can't get a driver's license, which means you can't get a job, which means you can't get, a car. You can't, many of these bus transportation systems, I think, work against folks. You can't get affordable housing on a bus line. It was just amazing
So
how that worked.
They're absolutely connected. The other thing too is that we objectify people. I'd like to say we serve people, we serve food,
Mhm.
we serve to our guests. Because I think what happens is we begin to objectify,
Mhm.
and
You're
the
right.
people who do not have a home, or who do not have a way to have the kind of nutrition they need, it's amazing how they become things instead of people. We don't get
Mhm.
close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're afraid to. I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
we really see them as projects. So even if our actions are actions of kindness, they come from a place of objectifying and of seeing where the person's lacking, as opposed to seeing the fullness of a whole child of God. And I
Mhm.
think that comes from a place of fear. I think
Oh,
doing
yeah.
this work requires us to face into the reality that most of us live in a position that, given any circumstance, COVID, loss of job, a medical issue, any of those pieces, we would be in the same situation. And that's the
Oh, for
piece.
sure.
So instead of dealing with that reality, we start creating, well, the reasons why they're homeless, and then they have to prove and demonstrate why they deserve to actually have a home. And
Mhm.
what you
Mhm.
named earlier, Diane, I appreciate this because this is huge, is our system changed. And I think it's our psychological understanding. When I worked at Wellspring House many, many years ago in Gloucester, the system was set up that to accomplish home ownership, to even accomplish that brilliant, magical Section 8, you had to demonstrate, you had to get sober, you had to get your life in order, you had to get your
Right.
children taking care of childcare, which if you're experiencing homelessness is nearly impossible, and
Mhm.
all these things to get a job. And I think there was a movement that happened. I know there was a movement, and it started like with 100,000 homes. It increased to many places in the psychological world, recognizing to get sober, you have to have shelter and you have to have a home to be stable and secure enough
Mhm.
to address the addiction. And so we
Mhm.
flipped it from that you have to prove to us to let's take those that are out on the outer margins, provide for them exactly what is needed to help them move through a
Mhm.
process and that doesn't even take into consideration all the biases of racism and the ways in which our society set up structures to keep individuals out and to not have a fair housing provision for them.
Right. Dee, I know that you also have someone from the Denver Presbytery who has worked with the Women's Homeless Initiative and safe parking. I believe we have our friend Reverend Sherry Fry with us. Dee, introduce Sherry, and Sherry, we'd love to hear about the work that you're doing.
So it's my joy because as we talked about that fear, to me, one of the core values of this work is relationship. It's community. That has to be there. And I think that has to be there for it to be effective. And I'm delighted because the Reverend Sherry Fry is a transitional pastor at Good Shepherd Presbyterian Church in North Glen, Colorado. Sherry has served in a variety of capacities, both in churches, in mid-council, and she also has served as our moderator of our Journey with Migrants. And recently, she has taken her church kind of through that arc of relationship building in the way they've set into this process. So, Sherry, please share your journey and your story. We look forward to hearing from you.
Hi, thanks to all of you for having me on today. I'm going to start back in 2013, so I promise this won't be too long or laborious. The Women's Homeless Initiative was a program that we got involved with when I was an associate pastor at Montview Boulevard Presbyterian Church, which is an urban church in downtown Denver. It was my first foray into homelessness and community-based work.
Oh, it looks like Sherry froze there for a second. In the meantime, we have a comment from our audience that says, you get the detox, then if outpatient long-term treatment, y'all need to get transportation to and from the treatment and maybe have a recovery coach to the area so they have one right there. This just goes to show how the system is stacked, right? If you've got addiction, if you have any type of even just medical need, if you have diabetes, if you have mental health issues, if you have, just a cold or a cough or the flu and need to get to a doctor, this is the kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think, Dee, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I am so passionate about this. There has to be wraparound services.
Yes.
There has to be wraparound services. And I think when we engage with our community and we get close to people so that people are no longer objects, we're serving them, we're working with them, they are our neighbors, they are our siblings. Then you realize the wraparound services. And then what happens is, I find that in community, people want to be helpful. They want to have an imprint. A lot of people do want to make their community and make the quality of life better for people. And I just believe innately in the goodness of humans, right?
Yes.
Right.
And so that's where the partnering happens. And that kind of partnering that you all have done in Denver with your housing piece, because you then begin to say we need transportation, and we need daycare, or we need childcare, or we need to have food served, we need to have dinner served, we need to have services for, and also I found that the population that we were working with, that as people began to transition and be able to do better for themselves, they also wanted to be a part of serving dinner. They wanted to be a part of what was happening. So it's not like we're doing things for people,
exactly,
with people. And so the community kind of said, these are the things that we need because the system is stacked against us. So we need to put these particular things in place. And then they come along, and we really kind of came alongside to empower and to work with them,
Right.
Exactly.
The way that,
yeah.
Dee, can you talk about your all's approach in Denver? We've got a question we've got a lot of folks that are wanting to know more. We've got some questions coming in from our audience. We're hearing a lot of folks saying that they love this relationship building and the relational approach. And Trina says, I would love to hear more about how the community came together to help change zoning laws and overcome the voices that were resisting changes like this. Can either one of you all speak to your experiences? Do you know anything about how Denver Presbytery did that?
I do. I know and you saw Mountain View they ran into a lot of resistance. And to me, the resistance is actually a lot of stories and myths that people have. I'm so glad Sherry's back, because Sherry can actually, what y'all are asking is actually, that is the depth of her sharing today. So I'm glad she's back. Sherry, I wonder if you'd be willing to jump in and share they're asking about how we dealt with the city councils, the community perceptions that were there, and how the church is engaged with that.
Yeah, so sorry about that. I don't know what happened. Technology. In 2020, I began serving up at Good Shepherd in North Glen, and we became a Matthew 25 church. We were called to continue to act boldly and compassionately in the community. And of course, we have a food bank here that's been operating for 35 years continuously. And we learned in 2021 about the Colorado Safe Parking Initiative, which was created to address the needs of people sheltering in their vehicles across. We have a large parking lot. We thought, why not invite people who are sheltering in their cars to park safely in our parking lot each night? The program felt like one more spoke in the wheel of healing, serving folks who are food insecure as well as housing, welcome people to the church, and provide a safe space. We did not have funds to build housing, but we did have this large parking lot. So we learned a lot about the program. We learned that it increased safety and security for people in their property and their cars. It increases access for folks in cars to better employment opportunities and education. It provides increased health. You don't have to worry about being at night, more day-to-day stability. We also learned a lot about that it provides less disturbance of residents by unauthorized parking. It reduces crime from people experiencing vehicular. There's fewer issues of litter and human waste, which became a big issue up here, and just reduces the cost. The guests have to apply to the program to be in it, and they're vetted by the Colorado Safe Parking Program as well as by our own organization, by the church. There's also a social worker that's involved. But I will say the attempt at getting this permit has not been easy. We began working with the City Council of North Glen and the police department. We had multiple meetings. I had to write an extensive application for a special permit to the city. This community-based collaboration is a great thing to do, and it's great buy-in, but it was also hard. It was hard. We held 4 listening sessions with the community where over 100 people attended each session. The city council and the mayor and police were very much in support of us doing this. But of course, as you might imagine, the neighbors were not. And we listened to many of their concerns. And I would say, is what you've all addressed, and I know Dee has said as well, people, I think it comes out of fear. I think it comes out of not knowing anybody who is experiencing homelessness. We heard all kinds of things from the neighbors about what was going to happen from their property values to the fact would decrease, to the fact that they might be harmed, that if we were started with 5 cars in the parking lot. So we're talking 5 cars of people, 2 to a car at the most. And but our neighbors thought they were all drug dealers and they would be defecating all over the yards, and that Denver was busing people to North Glen because they wanted to change the character of the city and get them out of Denver. We heard NIMBY, right? Not in my backyard. We heard that over and over and over again. So I finally got smart at the end of the last listening session, and I began to invite the loudest voices of opposition to come join us in creating this program and work, and that we would all have buy-in to it. And if we created it together, then maybe we wouldn't have to be so scared. So we created a church and with the neighborhood to have regular check-ins, that we would all be very transparent in what we were doing. And they began to get on board. But this took 9 months, 10 months to get this all to happen. In addition, about 5 months ago, we invited a woman named Mary who'd been attending our church, and she was living in her car, sheltering in her car. We invited her to start living in the church, and we bought her a cot, and she uses our kitchen here, lives in one of our classrooms, and we have learned a lot. We've learned a lot from Mary, and Mary is going to be part of this program as well. Inviting people and offering hospitality to folks who are sheltering in the cars in the parking lot. But all of our lives have changed having Mary here with us. We've all learned that we have stories to share, really important stories to share. And we do that together, right? We've learned about her life. She's learned about ours. The relationship with her is very simple and light, but we've also learned what a difference it makes to us as a congregation to not be so scared of people who don't have homes, to understand how they got in that position to begin with, to open our hearts and our minds to folks who are having to live differently than we do. The mayor of North Glen said we need to start not from a place of deficit, but we need, and not to jump to conclusions about people. And the only way we're going to do that is to spend time in relationship and getting to know each other and listening to each other. And it's a slow process, but it's working. I mean, I think it's working, and it's changing our neighborhood, and it's changing our church. And I think it's changing Mary as well. We see a lot of just in all of our interactions.
Well, and you learned Mary was a chef, a baker.
And she was also a vet. She's a vet. She was in the Army, and she lost her hearing in an explosion times out from the vet. But we didn't know any of that when this started.
Yeah, a disproportional rate of houseless people are veterans And I know this as a veteran who has served, and that is the soft spot for me, is, taking care of those who took care of us. And I love the approach. Whenever I hear your story, Sherry, it reminds me of really how Jesus approached doing this work, right? So Jesus, had this transactional relationship with people where he was like, we've got to feed the 5,000. That's like the first level. We've got to feed the 5,000, right? And then level 2, he began to build relationships with folks. He would listen to people and have relationships, one-on-one conversations with his disciples, right? This is sort of level 2. And then Jesus was also a level 3, took it to the next level, like you all have, and said, we are going to overturn the systems and the structures of power that are casting people to the margins, because everyone has a story. Everyone is a beloved child of God. Sherry, thank you so much for sharing that, what you all are doing. Amazing work. And I love that you said this has taken a long time. Right?
Yeah.
It's just taken about 9 months. And I think that's where a lot of people begin to get frustrated, right? We want quick answers. We're used to such a what I call a happy meal society, where we just pull up into the drive-through and we order our happy meal and we go about our way. But whenever things get tough and life happens and situations become hard, we all know, what does the church do? We make a casserole. That's when the casserole ladies come up.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time and a lot of ingredients to make a casserole.
I want to also intersect to say that 9 months is not a long time.
No.
And when you're talking about building community and building relationships, churches that really want to change the systems and really organize communities and get communities moving, I think we should go in with our eyes wide open.
Yeah.
It does not happen overnight. 9 months is fairly soon. It may seem
For
a
this
lot
type
to
of
us,
work.
but I think I would just want to pause to say that, because you've got to be. This is not a sprint; it's a marathon, and it's so many different pieces that you'll go through. And so, it's a part of taking up the cross, right? It's the suffering of love, so that folks can see something different and something can be initiated different. But I think it's real important for us to go in with our eyes wide open.
I wanted to let everyone know that we have converted the video that Molly sent. And so we do have it. And if you don't mind, we'd love to show it now.
Let's see it. Yeah.
I am Molly Dowling Brown. I serve as Central Presbyterian Church's Director of Mission and Faith Formation. Central is a church located in downtown Denver. I also serve as the Denver Presbytery's Matthew 25 work group moderator. Denver Presbytery is engaged with affordable housing along the continuum, from immediate care to supportive care, to advocacy, education, and legislative efforts, to long-term housing solutions. Our immediate care efforts include Denver Presbytery churches partnering with the Women's Homeless Initiative. Due to the pandemic, the Women's Homeless Initiative has changed in the ways it serves women needing help. Currently, our churches provide toiletries and meals to women experiencing homelessness. New Genesis is a transitional housing site located downtown at Central Presbyterian. This site receives support from Central and Grace Presbyterian churches, along with other community churches and organizations that help with food and meal prep. This is a sober living community that houses approximately 100 men each night at Central. In addition to the work done at New Genesis on site, New Genesis has links within the community to help families experiencing homelessness move into affordable apartments. Supportive services include the Network Ministries mission. This partnership provides space, coffee, conversation, fellowship, clothing, toiletries, and Thanksgiving dinner meals. Elizabeth, St. James, and Columbine United Churches and their members provide these services. In addition to what is given to people experiencing homelessness, the broader part of the work done here is folks hanging out together and building long-term relationships on site at the coffee house. First Presbyterian Aurora's support of the Colfax Community Network and its after-school program that supports children and families experiencing homelessness has done amazing work. This work was recently recognized in $2 million in city and county grants. These dollars were used to purchase a new building. With this new building, all of the sites that were once in different areas have come together in one place. Now families that are in need of assistance are able to go to one site for wraparound services as they work along the continuum and move out of homelessness. Good Shepherd Presbyterian Church provides a safe car sleeping program. Sherry Fry will explain more about this in detail later. When we come to the reality of finding permanent housing solutions, we can say that we've got 10 faith communities that partner with Habitat for Humanity. Habitat for Humanity has a specific religious component called Carpenter's Helpers. Our faith communities work via Carpenter's Helpers to build affordable housing. The affordable housing gives folks a place to create stability, get some rest, and have the reality of home ownership. Montview Manor and Denver's City Park neighborhood is another effort for affordable housing within the community. This effort focuses solely on seniors in need. Journey with Migrants is a Denver mission partnership through the Presbytery. This group of churches comes together to accompany immigrant and migrant families. Work includes acquiring and providing permanent housing for those that are undocumented in the Denver metro area and those that are seeking asylum here in the United States. Of course, telling our stories is part of the educational and advocacy components of Denver Presbytery. Dee Cooper will speak further to advocacy and legislative efforts.
That was good
Thanks.
to hear some of those. Even though we already heard from Sherry.
Yeah, that was the excitement of being live. When you get technical problems and that kind of stuff, you just sort of roll with it. But I appreciate being able to include Molly into the conversation. One last question that I have for you, Dee and Sherry, that I know that several of our churches would love to hear, and that is, what advice would you give another church or presbytery who wanted to address systems and structure in their community that's perpetuating poverty?
So Sherry, would you like to go?
Well, I would say perseverance. I'll tell you that. Which I think, a lot of our churches, people are doing really extraordinary things here in Denver. And I just think you have to not be scared, and you have to decide that you're going to step into this. And when somebody says no, you're just going to keep gently pushing. Our first response was no. I mean, the reaction we had from the neighbors was enough to make us all shut down. And it scared the session of the church a little bit. And, we got people threatened to sue us and all kinds of things. And we just kept at it. We kept meeting with them. We kept calling for more informational meetings and trying to listen, do a good job of listening deeply to what people were saying, and then trying to offer why we felt so called as a church community to do this. And we met, over and over again with leaders in the community. And just like what you said, it probably doesn't sound like a long time, 9 months, 9 to 10 months, but it has felt. There have been days it's felt like it, but we just kept talking to each other and checking in with each other and saying we really feel called and to act our faith out in this way. And because of our food bank and because and other people who are sheltering in cars, we had stories to attach to why people are in these positions. And that story making, I think, began to change the neighborhood as well. They could hear some of that on a better level. But it was like peeling an onion, sort of, we just kept going a little bit deeper and just don't take no for an answer, which there were days we kind of went, well, maybe we shouldn't do this. And then it was like, well, sorry, hell no, we're going to do this, right? Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't think.
No, you're good.
I think you just have to keep pushing forward. And because we're called to do that.
What about you, Dee?
So I would offer, it's very similar, is I think many times people want to jump in and do action. And it's not that action is bad or wrong. It's a piece, though, of concurrently while you're doing the things that engage you, is to ask, to listen, to respond, to wonder about, let's go further up to see why this is happening, to see what is happening in our system that is causing this outcome, and what can we do to change that. I think that involves patience. I think that involves, like Sherry said, don't let your own self-limitations prevent you from engaging. Too many times churches will think, well, we just look at us, we're small, or we don't have the economic support to be able to do a big program. I think it's vital to recognize there are so many levels of entry here and needed support in this ministry that people can engage. Even if it's, I'm going to go to the ballot and vote, that is in itself being a part of the eradication of the systemic poverty. But I also believe it's relying on those relationships. It's coming back over and over to know the community matters, and that we're approaching this and approaching in our care, in our outreach, in our relationship building of seeing each other as whole human beings and whole people of God. And how do we support and love each other no matter what circumstances we're faced in our life, to join together in that. And I think that's what God calls us to do.
Dee and Sherry, Molly, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for your ministries. Thank you for your perseverance, for your ability to not take no for an answer, to be tenacious in your love of God and your love of others, to actively and courageously engage the world around you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ooh, Diane.
Wow.
There's good stuff. I mean,
I think we're just scratching the surface, but my goodness, the work that this presbytery is doing in systemic poverty, that's what Matthew 25 is all about. It's not simply about serving a meal, at the soup kitchen, but asking, why does the meal need to be served? What is bringing people to a point where they have no home or they have to shelter in their cars? And not objectifying them or blaming them or thinking that they did something wrong. I often use the analogy, you've heard it before. If one fish, shows up on the shore, you say, what's wrong with the fish? But if a school of fish is floating up on the shore, you say, what's wrong with the water? So we've got to look at the water of systemic poverty and racism. And as people of God, say to ourselves, these are basic human needs. Matthew 25 delineates them. And I'm just really glad that we could talk to Denver Presbyterian, Dee and Sherry and Molly and hear about some of the things they're doing. So grateful for their ministry.
absolutely. Absolutely. And poverty is so complex and it overlaps with so many other social ills and oppressive structures in our society, including racism.
Absolutely.
And I love how Matthew 25 informs us that the center of our ministry is with those who sit on the margins of society.
Yeah.
Diane.
Absolutely. It's as we said before, Dee, is all of this is intersectional. And that was a term that was coined by an African-American scholar. And she talks about how one builds on the other, how one is connected to the other. And, as the people that have been touched by the Holy Spirit and see God in Christ and endeavor to follow Christ, we have got to center those who are dealing with poverty, those who are oppressed, whether it's racial oppression, whether it's oppression of any kind, and they're numerous, so I won't name them all, but any system of oppression. He said, I've come to set the captive free. I've come to bring good news to the poor. And so as we serve our human siblings, we are serving Jesus, and we're demonstrating God's love. We're demonstrating what God is saying. God desires that all of us would be whole, that we would live a full qualitative life, and that our places, the places where we travel, places where we are, our society would reflect the kind of humanity that God intended when God created us all and said, this is good. So I'm excited about Matthew 25. It calls all of us to act boldly and compassionately so that our faith does come alive, it's relevant, and the world can wake up to a new possibility. God is showing us a new possibility in kingdom living. And so together, churches and presbyteries and synods and other groups, Presbyterian women, men, all kinds of groups, colleges and universities, caucus, we are laying the groundwork. The focus has never been as important as is now when we're seeing so much injustice in our world. And so I want to say that if you are listening today and you are discerning an invitation to become a Matthew 25 church in the Presbyterian Church USA, particularly, but if we have a broader audience, I invite you to look at Matthew 25 as an organizing principle, a lens through which we come together to do ministry. But again, if you are Presbyterian, then we want to invite you to become a Matthew 25 church, a Matthew 25 Presbytery, or a Matthew 25 Synod. We need all of it. So if you're still discerning that invitation, please visit the website listed to help you in the process. I'm always available. We have many, many people on staff that want to assist and come alongside and help you so that together we can represent Jesus, his love and justice in this world that needs the healing that comes as we are in relationship with God and one another and the earth that we live in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Amen. I was in North Carolina last week talking to a church who is not a Matthew 25 church. And they said, well, why should I become a Matthew 25 church? I mean, I feel like we're already kind of doing all of these things. And I said, because we have to do this work together. Any type of advocacy, justice work, when we're talking about doing Matthew 25 work, we have to do it together. So yes, if you are, as Diane said, go to our website. It's scrolling across the bottom to become part of this exciting movement, this Matthew 25 movement within the Presbyterian Church. And I hope you will join us on Thursday, October 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, when we will celebrate 10 years. Diane, it's already been 10 years with the 1,001 new worshiping communities. Yes. We're going to take a look back at the unique work that they are doing in this next episode of Being Matthew 25. Again, that will be October 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thanks, everyone. Well, you're not going to want to miss it, because we've got clips from some of the very first imaginative and innovative communities and
coming together, right? Sharing the gospel, making disciples, being witnesses.
That's right.
And so anybody who wants to learn about that needs to be there October 20th.
As you well say, Diane, reintroducing Jesus and the kingdom of God to the world. We will see you next month, October 20th. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.